Hey guys, what's up? I'm making a video today to talk about how I do my drums in response to the question, how do I get my drums right? So let's just go ahead and dive right into it. This is Ableton Live 9 and this is a template that I usually start off with. It's my default. I'm going to include it in the um, About section below this video, so you can just go ahead and download it there. Usually where I start is with the kick drum. I guess we'll just go with a pretty simple um, four on the floor house beat and kind of work around that. Um, so this starts off with just a MIDI file that just loops four quarter notes. Um, and this is a preset. What do you call it? Just a kind of effect rack that I've put together. Little bits and pieces are kind of taken from lots of different tutorial videos and stuff, but this is what I came up with. What a lot of people like to do is layer their kicks so you can kind of get the best out of, you'll pick three different samples and you're looking for, like with your low kick, you want something where you like the low end of it and a mid sample where you like the mid, and you get the idea. But I also included an option here if you don't want to get into all that to just use one kick drum. And in that case, all of these parameters over here, which are made for editing these layers for your kick drum, none of these are mapped to anything in this solo kick. So this is just by itself. So I guess for time's sake, we'll just go ahead and start digging through samples here and just throw it in here. Alright, I kind of like this one. Alright, so let's see how that sounds. Maybe get the end out. Alright, that sounds okay. So for this channel here, or this track, I usually, just as an option, I have another effect rack that's just a little bit of processing options for the kick drum. But I think you'll find in lots of sample packs that usually your kick samples, well, most of the samples in general are already going to be have compression work done on them, and they usually come out of these sample packs pretty well processed already. So I usually try not to mess with like the compressor or limiter or anything like that, because I don't want to take away any of the dynamics of this kick sample. But when you're working with like layers and stuff, then it's then you can really get into that and start to shape your own kick. But this is alright for now. I guess let's make it a little bit longer and give it some variation. Okay, so here's what that sounds like. We'll speed that up just a little bit. Okay, so now let's go straight into other drums that I'll usually work with. So I have a track by itself. That's for the kick. This here is another preset rack that I made that's going to come included in this template. And again, most of this is taken from, like, this little effect rack right here was taken from a purchase template kit. So there's a lot of good stuff in here, but basically all those parameters are mapped to different things within this sampler, and this particular sampler is for just a there's a sampler in each one of these two, the mid and high, and then the sub. This is just another kick layer, but this sub is actually a synthesizer. I believe that's operator with more parameters that you can control. But because we already have a kick here, we're going to stay away from that and go straight into our snare or clap. And again, you can layer these, but as of right now, there's no effects done on each of these layers, so each layer is just essentially just a sampler with these controls on it. So let's just go ahead and start looking for these. I like the way that sounds, so we're just going to drag it straight in here and start writing out some MIDI notes. Now I'm not actually going to use the full quarter note length, but you'll see that, let's go ahead and play this. So these controls give you the ability to kind of choke the sample a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what the mapping is for these, but essentially these two do almost the same thing. This, I think, adds some more harmonics in the upper region. You can definitely go overboard with that though, so I'd like to just give it a little bit. Alright, moving on, let's pick we'll start with doesn't really have to be a closed hi-hat. I don't actually really follow this too strictly, but let's look for some samples. Alright, that one sounds kind of cool. Alright, let's go ahead and write these notes in here. So I'm going to do these on eighth notes. And then we're going to take these and bring their velocity down just so they're a little quieter. Let's see what that sounds like. So maybe here we will bring the overall volume down. Okay, so now let's add an open hi-hat. Which one? That one sounds nice. So maybe we'll bring the decay, give this a little shorter decay. Alright, that sounds pretty good to me. Let's start programming these. And then I'll just bring the velocities back up on those since I copied them. Oh, okay, so you're not hearing this hi-hat right now because I have what's called choke activated. So you'll see when you click on this view, it gives you this chain view of your whole drum rack, and when you look in here, you can see that these are on the same choke channel, and what that means is that while the two of them, any two that are in the same channel, such as these two, can't be played at the same time. So we're going to take these out of choke actually, so that they'll both play at the same time. And then just to match our kick loop, I'm going to go ahead and make this clip the same length. Okay, now that's pretty much like the basics of really literally any kind of house or techno beat that you'll ever see. Kind of the more fun part is when you get into adding all these other little percussive elements that go around those and kind of fill in the gaps. So I like snares. That one sounds cool. So we already have one of these. I'm just going to so I don't really want one of these type of things where I have a bunch of layers like that. I'd rather have it this way where it's just one sampler with these parameters. So I'm just going to copy this into another note. And then we'll call this one snare. And because this is a clap, we'll just change that to clap. Okay. So that still has that sample in it. So we'll replace the sample. Alright, there we go. So this has kind of a pretty robotic feel. I like to use swing a lot. So we'll just go into the core library here to swing and groove. I find that the MPC presets work the best. So you definitely want to go down into these 16. Make sure you don't use 8, at least for house beats. And then the further you get away from 50, the more swing you're going to have. So it looks like the lowest you can do just simply is 53. And you can barely really tell that that's swinging at all. 60 is probably closer to what we want to have, so we'll just double click on that, and then you can select that in the groove section here of the clip. So we'll apply that, and that just applies the groove setting to just this one clip right here. And you don't actually see any of the MIDI notes change. To do that, you have to click commit, and then you'll notice a bunch of the notes change. But for right now, we can just, as long as this is selected in here, it'll play that way. So. So the only note, quarter notes and half notes aren't really affected by the swing, but your 16th notes tend to be. So if you look at this here, when you commit that, it just nudges this snare a little bit later. Which gives it that kind of swingy feel when you hear it. So yeah, that's a little loud. Bring it down just a bit. Alright, so let's just add one or two more random instruments here. Here's a pack I like to use a lot. This is all samples from the Roland 808. Yeah, let's use this rim shot. Okay. So I'm going to record this out live on the push, and we'll just see these notes on here. I think just for a little more variety, we'll choose a different snare. Alright, that's sounding half decent. I guess let's add a crash at the beginning. Find one of those. I haven't been in this folder in a while. Yeah, that's a good one. and we'll just toss that in right at the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this clip right here. We'll just call this house beat. Yeah, oops. Let's do house V1 for first variation, and then we'll rename this one V2. So this one I'm going to add ride symbols into. I like that one. Throw that in here, and I think most people would probably just throw rides just on the offbeat, like where the hi-hats are, but I have a little bit of a different method. I like to put them on the one. I like to do eighth notes with them. Oops. Okay, and that sounds pretty bad when you just play it out without editing the ride at all. So. But what I'm going to do here is add a volume automation plugin on here that's pretty much just a sidechain plugin. So you can use whatever one you want. I have the Nicky Romero Kickstart. That one's pretty good, but doesn't have as much control as the LFO tool. I like this one a lot. So I'm just going to drag that just after the sampler so that it's only applied to this instrument alone. And then we'll go to sidechain. I know this one tends to be pretty good. So this is just gonna duck out the beginning of that first note on every quarter note beat, and then I'm doing this at the end here just to eliminate any clicking that's gonna happen at the end. So let's see what that sounds like on the ride. So that's giving, you're not really hearing the attack of the first ride, the ones on the downbeat, but you catch just a little bit of the end of them as it's leading into the next one, and that just is one little trick that I like to use. So I didn't play that exactly right, but going from one section of your arrangement to the next, it's usually good to have a little change in variation, what's going on with your drums. Okay. And let's just turn this down a little bit because that's pretty loud. I like to use this sidechain plugin on a lot of other stuff too, because seeing as the kick is kind of the center of most house music, you got to make room for it in your mix. So let's just add, this is getting slightly off topic here, but we'll just add a MIDI bass so that we can see how that's going to interact with drums. Okay, so I'm going to load this bass into this MIDI channel. Alright, there it goes. And I'm also going to activate this filter in the chain here. It's a low pass filter. Here, I'll open it up. And just get rid of some of the high end on this bass here. Alright, I like that. So we're just going to record this in with the rest of this first section up here. Actually, let's try that one more time. Just editing these a little bit. I guess just so you can see the effect of that LFO, let's actually put some of these on the one right where the kick is happening. So you can already hear when the kick drum and this bass hit at the same time, they do not interact well together. So I'm just going to throw that LFO tool. For you guys who actually decide to download this template, it's got a couple third-party plugins in it, like here and there. So if all the plugins don't work for you, don't worry. Most of them are completely interchangeable with other plugins. Like this is an SSL EQ, but you could just use a regular EQ8 like this. In terms of a substitution for this LFO tool, that might be a little bit difficult, but you can just use regular sidechain compressors. That's what this channel is for. This is a muted channel that's just playing quarter notes with a muted kick drum, so it's creating a signal for you to map your sidechain compressor to. But yeah, for now I just use the LFO tool. Let's throw that on. Alright, that's given the kick drum a nice amount of room. So that sounds pretty good. Yeah, let's hear it all. Okay. Alright, so now we have our drums programmed and everything. Now I kind of like to mess with a few little things here we'll go over. So these two different snares are panned dead center right now, so I'm going to go ahead and change that with the pan here. So I'm going to take this first snare and pan it not too far, but just a little bit to the left, and this one to the right. So now you're hearing those out of different sides, just a little bit, just enough to kind of make you feel a little bit more space when you hear it. And then for this hi-hat, I'm actually going to put a really short delay on it. So this is just that first hi-hat we put in. So this delay has a lot going on, but I'm gonna link these two together, and instead of using these timed out delays, I'm gonna measure it in milliseconds here. So this you can go pretty light on, but it almost gives the effect of a second hi-hat. And then what you can also do to go a little bit further would be to just copy that to another note. And if we're doing it this way, let's actually turn these delays off. And then I'm just going to pan these. Well, actually, since these are both stereo, like these samples are playing out in stereo already, panning them isn't going to do much, so let's leave those delays on, but I'm going to change this one just a little bit. And then this one, I'll leave the delay off, but I'm going to transpose it down one semitone just so these two sound a little bit different. But when they play together, I'm sure, well, let's see if the notes are copied over. Okay, and then the layout is a little weird, bear with me. So these two are just about almost the same thing. Hearing a little bit of clicking, I'm not really sure where that's coming from. Try to figure that out another time. But yeah, so I think that's about all the depth that I'm going to go into right now with this rack. You can go pretty deep, especially when you get into um, layering samples and stuff like that. And then also everything in this drum rack has a processing section that by default isn't activated, but this is just a little bit of extra. Like I guess for this clap, you probably don't want many lows. And then we can give it give this a little bit of drive. Alright, that's doing absolutely nothing. Let's replace this with a saturator. Or, you know what, actually, I'm going to go with the Redux here. This is a bit crusher that I really like, so sorry about that. Okay, so that just gives it like a good amount of grit to it, and then let's just give it a little bit of compression here. Alright, last thing we're going to do here is just do a little bit more to that open hi-hat of the same thing that we did to the close hi-hat. So we'll copy this over. And this one I'm going to transpose down one note. This one I'm going to bump up a note. I'm going to pan them pretty hard. Whoops, not what I wanted to do. So that one's 43 to the left. I'm going to pan this one about the same to the right. Oh, I was wondering. Okay, so I just need to copy these MIDI notes into this lane. And real quick, let's just swap out this sample. Oh, no, I guess my drive is not connected right now. Never mind. So that's about it. Leave your questions in the comments and stuff, and I'll try to get back to them. Thanks for watching.